right. This is becoming my favorite song. Okay? I have no idea what the lyrics mean, but we're going to get to that. I want to say good evening to all of you who are joining already, and for those who are going to join. We have a really wonderful guest today. I'm going to read a really short bio, but I know a lot more about her than what the bio says. But I want you to officially meet Akhila Ramnarayan, writer, scholar, theater actor, singer, songwriter, now based in Chennai, but she spent 15 years in the US, mostly in Columbus, Ohio, where she was an academic. What was really amusing is she was such a reluctant music student and found every single excuse to run away from class. Little did she know that she was being trained by really eminent people. But you see how things catch up with you, Akhila? You come a full circle. You go from Chennai, you go to America, come right back, and now you have this fabulously quirky, wacky music album. And really, today's conversation is to celebrate that. Yeah, is to celebrate the music album. So for all of you who are joining us, this is the launch. I mean, this is like a pre-launch or a teaser. Akhila Ramnarayan has, for years, been nurturing the secret desire, and she's been part of indie pop bands in America and sung, but it's always sort of been like a side thing, right, Akhila? You've sort of been like a serious academic. She comes back to India. She gets enfolded in a theater group in Chennai, which her mother formed, called Just Us Repertory. I've seen her on stage. Akhila and I have collaborated on a Tagore project. You know, we've worked together. I've watched her on stage and also as a collaborator. But this music album is really different. It's a way, like, when I heard the Tawil during your Miyaki thing, I would say, oh, wow, this is like really nice. This, you know, and for me, it sounded just right. Because like you, part of me will always be a New Yorker, and part of me will be this Chennai girl. So, first, you've done this album. It's called Woe Begone, and you've done it with a group of really first-rate, kick-ass Chennai musicians. I mean, fabulous people. Vedant Bharadwaj, you've got Praveen Sparsh, you've got Paul Jacob, you've got who's the girl on violin? Shreya Devnath on violin. I mean, look at this. It's 4 amazing talents. Then there's you. And you're actually telling me that this entire album, you never met each other.
No. That's not precisely true. And there's a 5th member of the Alchemists, Doug Carraway in Columbus, Ohio. He's played drums on the kit drum on the album throughout, and multiple other instruments.
So Alchemist, Akhila, no. The title Akhila Alchemist, who came up with that?
Akhila and the Alchemists, it was actually, I come from a family of writers. We have a WhatsApp group, and so we threw out suggestions, and then I gave the band some options. But the idea is that alchemy is sort of a precursor to chemistry, and an alchemist is sort of seen as a mysterious enchanter type figure who can turn base metals into gold. And I just felt through this process that these musicians have turned these songs that I originally wrote into gold. And that's where this comes from. They're the Alchemists, I'm Akhila. But we did not meet, to answer your question. Vedant Bharadwaj and I have been the ones who met the most. He's a singer, songwriter, a film music director. He works with children on music and on Bhakti and Sufi music. But he plays the guitar, and he can also rock. I mean, he's grown up with both. And I met him actually in a production with you in Avani many years ago for the first time.
Vedant has been mixing my music and doing my sound design for 15 years. 15 years. And I trust him implicitly when it comes to, you know, the sound. So, So, and Shreya, I've watched growing up. I've just watched her growing up, you know. I don't know Praveen as well, but Paul Jacob and I, we've certainly had many occasions. So it's just an amazing collaboration. But Akhila, you say in your bio you were a reluctant musician early on when you were young. But was this album something like gestating within you? Academic, scholar, actor, okay? But songwriter, singer, but to actually do an album. So you've got to tell us about, did the lockdown spur it?
No, the lockdown perhaps catalyzed the creative energy that I was feeling. But all this started in December 2018, when one day I woke up feeling really despondent, really sad, blue, and I was brushing my teeth, and the word "Woe Begone," which means sad, melancholy, it has all these connotations, popped into my head. Go figure, English teacher, words pop into your head. So then I realized if we split it, the word woe means sorrow, and begone, be gone, you know. So I suddenly realized I could play with that word, and the next thing I knew, I was sitting on my bed and just writing a song. So I would turn on, so something really funny is that these are indie rock, indie pop songs throughout, but I always sing with tambura. Tampura. So I turned on the Tantra app, and then I said I'd counted out the song, and I sang a melody, and I sent it to Vedant on WhatsApp, and he said, come to the studio, come, let's jam. And then one thing led to another. He said, let's record it. I said, we don't have any other musicians. He said, doesn't matter, just record it, let's see what happens. So that see what happens became one song, then the next, and along the way I invited all these friends. I met Paul Jacob when I was 18 in college, and his rock and roll band was the one my parents were in horror of, because I'd run off with them sometimes to different cities singing backing vocals. These long-haired, pot-smoking, motorcycle riding boys, you know. And then Doug Caraway, I was first his groupie in the US. I saw him in an independent music festival in a park, and just said, who's that? This amazing drummer. And then we became friends because he was a staff member at Ohio State. He's a video producer. He still does that. And so Doug and I were friends for 15 years. We listened to great music together, live shows. We used to sit and listen to records together, but we never played together in all those years. I mean, Doug's the person who drove me to the airport in 2011 when I was weeping inconsolably at leaving. It was a hard decision to leave the US and Columbus, which had been home for 15 years. So he's been a very dear friend, and he also said, all right, he got himself out of retirement. He had played with a band, a very well-known band called Nude, for 16 years, and then he'd sort of done other things. So he brought himself out of retirement for this project, and he also learned, and along the way got interested in mixing the record. And so he did that from January onwards. He's the one who's mixed the music, and a friend of his mastered the entire album.
Akhila, being immersed in the world of teaching English, right, for so many years, and also I know you're a voracious reader. You come from a family of literature and literary thinkers. So, do you think that your English background, you accessing to Keats and Shelley and other people, as well as other literature, you were able to feed into all the impulses and really put the words are so interesting. What I'm coming to say, the play of words, they're actually surreal. They don't really have a meaning when you really want to it's like, what? But then they obviously mean something to you. I mean, they've come out to you as something. So I want you to just read for our audience. Can you just read the lyrics of the single that you are releasing, please?
Okay.
The single.
Let's just see. I won't give any context. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead.
Yeah,
it's
context.
Called Think. No context. Or context. Would you?
No. Please give us a context. We are Instagram distracted, attention deficit audience now, 18 months into the pandemic. Okay? Yes. We need some context. Yes.
Okay, so I have a very dear friend who's an illustrator named Saloni Sinha.
Yeah.
And her Instagram handle is Morbid Illusion. So if you're interested, you can check this out. And she has a very surreal imagination. And I saw an image of hers, which has now become the cover art work for the single, on Instagram actually, the first time. And it's a glass jar. And it's a woman inside the jar, and there's some foliage all around. And there's a cat outside on the handle. The woman is tiny, the jar is huge, and she's looking up.
Can I show it to my audience? I'm hoping that it doesn't reflect.
Yeah, I think people can sort of see it. Yeah.
Okay.
So I thought this is yes. I thought this was so strange and beautiful.
Yeah.
And I was telling Doug, and she agreed to do our album art. So
right.
I just sent this to Doug and said, she's really wacky. Think Miyazaki. And if you know who Miyazaki is, Hayao Miyazaki is an Japanese anime film director, very famous for his Studio Ghibli films such as Spirited Away, which won an Oscar, and My Neighbor Totoro, which a lot of children watch. So I said, just think Miyazaki, and then that kind of stuck in my head. So I wrote this chorus: she be really wacky, think Miyazaki. Hokusai just won't do, Basho tickles too few. Hokusai is a Japanese painter. His great wave of Kanagawa is very famous. It's like a tsunami-like wave. And Basho, Matsuo Basho is the maestro of haiku. He's one of the greatest Japanese poets. And so I said, if you want to think of her, don't think of Basho or Hokusai, think Miyazaki. Butterflies surround her, the woman in the jar.
Yeah.
No bell jar, an arbor. An arbor is a little floral.
Bell jar was Sylvia Plath. Yeah. Bell jar was Sylvia Plath.
No bell jar. This isn't a bell jar. Sylvia Plath, the great the poet, talks about the bell jar as a metaphor for a claustrophobic existence for a woman. So I said, this woman is doing something else. No bell jar, but an arbor. Fear not, trusty feline, poised to make a beeline. So the cat is sitting there looking like it's heading away or towards from something. And then I have this line: she is so high on life, higher than a kite, drifting out of sight. So this chorus, which is repeated throughout, to me symbolizes all of us in the lockdown. And what Saloni did is to call the image lockdown jar. And she said it's about the flowering of your inner world while nature flourishes outside, because we're all locked up in and we're not doing bad things to nature. And this goes really well with the entire theme of the album. For me, this album is about the fate of humanity in the face of great peril to the planet. You know, we've had a pandemic, but we also have a climate crisis. So that theme runs through almost every song. So it's about how do you find the inner strength to live through dark times, terrifying times, and still allow your imagination to flourish. So as surreal and wacky as this song is, I think it's about the artistic imagination and how it has to see the ugly in the beautiful and the beautiful in the ugly. I mean, the world as it is, there is still beauty, there is ugliness. We have to look at it unflinchingly if we're artists. So that's what the song is about. That's the chorus. And then there's a rap. There are rap verses which are much darker. So the lightness of the chorus contrasts with the darkness, which shows us the seediness of urban life, city life, existence as we know it, religious wars, everybody's calling everybody else an infidel. And we're just stumbling our way through trying to make sense of all these different things in our lives. I chose this, I mean, everybody unanimously agreed, all of us, that this should be the single because there is a strong impulse to joy and freedom and the power of the imagination and survival, which we thought would be good to sort of lead people into the album with. Because we've been through a terrifying second wave in India. We've all known what it feels like to go through extreme isolation, loneliness, fear, paranoia. But I think we need to have a different kind of virus spreading through. And the feeling that we all had, embracing each other remotely as a collective, though we never met, all the musicians except Praveen and Shreya, who are actually married to each other and live in the same house, we didn't do any of the recording together. Vedant and I have done some of it. Doug was on his own. And then Doug, who's never met any of the Chennai musicians, actually was taking all the music and mixing it. And as you know, mixing music is very similar to film editing. Everything happens on the cutting floor because everybody records their parts, and then making sense of it is something that Doug did. He equipped himself with the technology, the hardware, the technical prowess, and worked with local Columbus musicians, Indian musicians, his former bandmates, so many others, in order to get the right sound for us.
Wow. Can I just read, you said this, the stuff that you sort of rap on in Think Miyazaki. You said, infidels in cheap hotels, drowning in their drink, tolling bells and gaming hells, bordellos painted pink. This is where we see ourselves celebrate the seasons, the work of fickle elves. Did you do a lot of writing, scratching, talking out aloud, trying to hum it, and then changing the words? Did you do something even during the recording? Did you sort of say, this is not fitting, maybe I need to change this?
It's interesting, the verses that I rap in this song are part of a song I wrote many years ago, and there was a melody to that song. The lyrics were mine, and so when I was working on this chorus, I was thinking I'll write out some lyrics for a rap, and these words, you know, it was in an all-woman band, punk band called Kitty Jones that I was in, I think in the early 2000s, just post 9/11. So yeah, and there was a kind of a darkness to being in America at that time.
Oh yes.
I got asked, why do you hate us so much? Though I had nothing to do with the 9/11 hijackers, you know, by educated people. So I mean, this fear and paranoia is taking over the entire universe. It feels like right now. But so I just felt like Saloni's art is it also has this sort of morbid, surreal feel to it. So I kind of felt like, you know, this was the seeing the beautiful in the ugly. We could bring, I repurposed some sung verses, the words of that, but it is post 9/11, and I wrote this chorus post pandemic, and those for me have felt like defining moments in my own inner growth in terms of what is happening in the world and what I'm trying to do and how I'm trying to negotiate my way through all our travails. So that's where that comes from. And those words, when I wrote them back then, came very easily. I didn't strike out a lot. But I think I've listened to so much music. I've read Cole Porter and Ogden Nash, who are all master rhymers. There are so many sort of witty, satirical bands. One called Cake, one called the Bare Naked Ladies. So many. There are English bands that do this. So I think there's a tradition that I'm following here. But also, you know, everything I've read, not only in music, but, you know, so many writers who play with images and words. I think the images come before the words, but then I take a lot of care in the words. So I'd use the word bordello for brothel, which is an old word, because I wanted to suggest past and present, a continuity of sort of CD experience that comes to us. And the infidels here, you know, because there were jokes at the time that the 9/11 hijackers were hanging out in a nightclub in the US right before they did what they did as one last hurrah. And everybody thinks of everybody else as an infidel, you know. So I was trying to wrap my head around, you know, how we, other different communities stereotype each other. And but it wasn't that conscious, Anita. I wasn't thinking like an academic. It's just that when you read and I've listened to music all my life, you know. I mean, I grew up with both literature and music. I mean, the voice of M.S. Subbulakshmi was always in my home, live and recorded. You know, Kalki was famous for his songwriting abilities and his humor. So I think I've had several strands in several languages as far as writing lyrics go. I mean, I should be better at that stuff, I think. I'll keep working.
How about your own singing voice, Akila? I know that you're a trained singer, even though you were reluctant, and you've actually taken. You have a fifth song on the album called "Here It Comes," and you've taken Muthuswami Dikshitar's Akhilandeshwari. He's a favorite composer of mine, and you've taken that and you've sort of adapted it. So, where did that choice come from for that particular choice to take a Dikshitar and bring it into the 21st century?
Here It Comes is a very special song to me because it was directly inspired by a conversation with my bandmate Vedant. One day, I was feeling really lonely and miserable during the lockdown, and I called him and I was speaking to him, and I said, I'm really finding it painful. I'm processing all this stuff that, baggage from years ago. And he said, you should feel like there's a sun rising in your mind every time you do this work on yourself, as painful as it is. And that image stuck. So the song is about the sun. I mean, those lines are literally there in the song. You say there's a sun rising in my mind. And I feel all the love, I'm waiting for the sun, here it comes. And the Here It Comes is an allusion to the Beatles' Here Comes the Sun.
Yes,
and Waiting for the Sun is the name of a song by The Doors. In addition to Muthuswami Dikshitar, the great grand maestro of Carnatic music, we have some other icons in the song, alluded to in the song as well. But with the Dikshitar, it's really funny. I wrote the English song first. I mean, the English part of this first. And every time I sang the chorus, I would keep hearing this one part of Akhilandeshwari at the end of the Charanam. That bit. So I don't know. I've always felt like I've had a fraught relationship with Carnatic music for sure, but it's always a doppelganger. So even when I am trying to shut out the voice of Shemmangudi Srinivas Iyer and listen to the voice of Chris Cornell or Kurt Cobain, somewhere that voice creeps into my head. So I kept humming this last bit. And Akhilandeshwari, one of the stories about my name is that I was named after my mother heard that Shemmangudi and MS sing that song once when she was pregnant. So I think somehow this found its way in. And then Vedant actually said, there's a favorite etude, wait. And because I'd sent him this, so he put it in front and then he played that etude. You'd have to ask him, I think it's Chopin, but something that he's practiced. So it starts with a Western classical etude, goes into the Pallavi of Akhilandeshwari, and then gets into the rock song with this nice screaming electric guitar by Doug. So, yeah.
Do you think, Akhila, that, when I'm reading the lyrics, and you sent me the lyrics, it reads more like poetry rather than song lyrics? I think your entire album can even be like spoken word. I mean, you could have another avatar of it. It's like literally spoken word. My friend, the Native American poet Joy Harjo, does a lot of spoken word of her own poetry. And I'm looking at your words and I see that, philosophy is colliding with pop and with life, with dinge and dirt and grime and glory and ice cream and candy and, laddu and halwa. But it seems like it fits you because 15 years away from India in America, and you said you left sobbing because you weren't quite sure about what part of you you're leaving behind and what you were coming back to. And has this album in some way kind of brought your many sides together?
Thank you for saying the stuff about my lyrics. I really appreciate you saying that because I take a lot of care in writing them. I don't rest till I find the right words. And they go with the melodies. I usually I'm humming and singing, "Oh, begone, understood on." It kind of goes like that for me.
Right.
So far it has. That might change. I don't know. But what I wanted to say about this album is that been a tremendous solace, and it's helped me heal in ways that that makes it incredibly special to me. I don't even care if nobody listens to it, honestly, because of what it's done for me to make me whole. And I think that when I moved away in 2011, I'd spent almost my entire adult life, all my adult life in the US. It was I came back in my late 30s, complete career change. I quit academia. Of course, I'm back now. That's a different story. But I think at that time, I decided that I would assimilate and I wouldn't be that kind of NRI that, is always acting uppity or, acting like you don't belong here and speaking with an American accent, blah, 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 my lovely Midwestern Columbus accent that I'd had for a long time. So so I said, okay, this is what I'm doing. And, I went and found all my mother's, I just inherited my mother's cotton saris, and I got heavily into theater, but, a lot of mythological work, classical arts, some Carnatic stuff. I'm one of the co-founders of a performing arts group, and that's all fantastic because I was making up for lost time in a sense, and I've learned incredible amounts from doing all this work. Also, theater was like a new language, and having done a PhD and specialized in something and then taught for 6 years in the tenure track, I knew how much specialization takes, and so I knew I had to give it everything I had. I mean, I was even uncomfortable walking on stage. I felt like I was in a nudist camp. The first time I started rehearsing for theater, and you won't understand this, you've been a performing artist all your life, but I'd been sitting and writing and thinking of myself as just the person who thinks and not the body in the world. So that was a huge learning for me, and I've been choosy about work I do because, I wanted to give it that heft. I had to work on stuff, and get better at it. And of course I had, fantastic veterans to show me the way right from the beginning, for which I'm really grateful. But this record, what it did for me is remind me of that indie singer. I sang in 5 different indie bands. I'll give you, and the approach, it wasn't showbiz in the way it sometimes is in Chennai. In many of the bands I was in, we just toiled in obscurity. We just wanted to play and play, and once we had 40 minutes worth of music, I remember taping a demo tape on a 4-track or an 8-track in somebody's basement. The first band I was in called the Foibles, and then taking that tape out, we'd written on it with a silver pen, the Foibles, and took it out to a local dive bar. And they said, you're the most eloquent, you go and pitch this somewhere. So then, we would play. And sometimes we would play last in the winter because we would be an opening act, and so we can be shuffled around anywhere. And people didn't want to be the last band to go on at 1 o'clock. So, hauling drums, the singer always gets to help the drummer. So you're hauling drums across icy pavement, going down lurching down these stairs with all this equipment. And then you're playing for the last 2 drunks who are sitting in the bar. And it's kind of like a step down from the Beatles in Germany. Nobody cared about their music, when they first set out. And that attitude, I remember rehearsing in a paint store. My bandmate in another band, Joe, he worked in a paint store. And Dan, the saxophone player, Joe was a guitar player, Joey Brewer. And we used to just go to his paint store on Sundays, drink beers and just play our hearts out for 4 or 5 hours. The smell of paint cans all over the place, and we never cared about going out and performing in public. And I think it lost, it's wonderful to do commission projects and it's wonderful to have to fight for a budget, but just that feeling of creating something just to make yourself happy, to have that creative intensity, that's what this album has brought back for me. And I feel like that away self, that sang in indie bands and had this sort of renegade spirit, has now reconciled itself to the home self. And they sometimes get into it, they clash, but it's okay, they can live with each other.
Well, I think for those who have joined us halfway through the conversation, I'm speaking to singer-songwriter Akhila Ramnarayan. And this is a new hat she's wearing. She's worn it secretly, but we've known her in Chennai as an actor. director and an academic now at Kriya University. But she has launched her first maiden album titled Woe Begone. And one of the songs in this album is titled Woe Begone. That's the first song she wrote. But she's actually releasing a single from the album called Think Miyazaki. And that's happening in a couple of days. And we've just talked about some of the process, some of the early kind of impulses and inspirations. And I want to ask you about how you came up with titles for these songs. Chinese Rocket, House of Cards, Here It Comes, Endling, Owl and the Pussycat, Apocalyptic. So, I mean, who came up with these titles?
The Owl and the Pussycat is a poem. Is a poem by Edward Lear. So we will leave that to Edward Lear. Yes. And it's actually something that I wrote with Vedant, the melody and the arrangement. We worked on it together for a children's musical. And so in memory of that, and there's lots of animal and bird references and sounds in this album anyway. So we felt it like it had to be in here. So the only love song is an interspecies romance between an owl and a pussycat, and they're married by a turkey. Anyway, so that's Edward Lear's. Endling is the name of the last of the word that is used to define the last creature of a species. And I read an article by a writer named Ed Yong in the Atlantic Monthly about the last snail of an indigenous snail species in Hawaii, and how the biologist that was tending to that snail, his heart broke. It was a 14-year-old snail named George. And that article really haunted me. And I didn't think I was going to write a song. I mean, honestly, Anita, I never set out to write songs. They just happened. I still don't know why. It's just like this huge miracle in my life that these songs showed up. I mean, not that I didn't work hard on them. I mean, if you look at the original Ode to a Nightingale written by Keats by hand, he's struck over it and replaced words all over the place, though you think it's been produced in some spontaneous overflow of powerful feeling, as they say. But I mean, I worked on them, but the impulse to write was so strong, I would blow away everything. I mean, my administrative meetings, I shouldn't be confessing this to everybody, but anything. I mean, the drive to write was so strong, I would literally stop everything else until I was done with it. I wouldn't go on. And I think it saved me. It saved me from my darkest self in some sense, because I was able to sort of let some of the stuff out that was going on in my head. So Endling is named after that snail, and the song is about, I just started thinking about, we complain about loneliness during this, during this time in our lives, but what would it be like? We can't even imagine. We can't anthropomorphize that. What would it be to be the last creature, calling out to a mate that never comes? One frog did that. I read about this in an article. So that's Endling. Apocalyptic, I was having a chat with a friend, and instead of writing apocalyptic, this person wrote, there was just a typo. And I looked at it and I started laughing. It's Lypstic. And I said, I'm going to write a song about this. So some of it was just whimsy. And then it just became this question of, the song became a song about hyper-consumerism, amusing ourselves to death. That's Neil Postman's phrase. Online sales going up at a time of, during a once-in-a-century crisis. The world we live in, and the strange things we do to cope and survive. And we're hurtling towards disaster, but in the meantime, we're buying everything we can. We're doing retail therapy. Yes. So that's what that song is about. And it ends on a small poem by Subramanya Bharati. So, yeah. Just everything. I feel all modes.
Do you have a
this moment?
Yeah, I think so, because I've known you now, Akhila, on and off for so long. Yeah, I've known you for so long, and there's a little spark that I see in you. Your eyes are lighting up, because for many years I always believed you were hiding your light under a bushel. I think you were under this big shadow a great giant of a great grandfather, you know, Kalki Krishnamurti, and then your grandmother, and then your mother, Gauri Ramnarayan, and now you. It's like, it's hard. I know what it is to belong to giants, you know, who have contributed. I myself have had to find a way to walk out of it, but in a very different way. You've actually had to walk out of it, but in a different stream, but not that dissimilar, you know. You come from people who have resisted, who have revolted, who have been incarcerated, who have been tried and tested, and perhaps these 10 years have in a sense, you know, done that to you. And this album is your way of sort of, you know, this is your get out of jail card in a sense. Whatever that thing was, I think the cobwebs are clearing. Yeah, and do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite on this album? Do you have a favorite track?
I have a song that is dedicated to my friend Ben Schechter, who passed away in 2003. He was a fantastic bass player and a musician. He was 24. He died in a hit and run in New York City. He had an interview the next day at Discovery Channel, and he was such a precious human being and such a gift to the world that I resolved on that day that I have his photograph still since that time on my desk always, that I must lead a meaningful life, a life with integrity and creativity in memory of my dear friend Ben. So House of Cards, I mean, the metaphor of the House of Cards is, we used to stand near my back door and talk to each other all the time about everything. And I remember once, my uncle had left his vinyl collection with me, and I had the Carnegie Hall concert of MS on vinyl, the LP, and I had a turntable. And I remember Ben sitting with me and listening to the entire concert, though he had no background in Carnatic music. He was just an instinctive, beautiful musician. So House of Cards is my favorite. Woe Begone is the one that started it all, and it's a favorite for other reasons. But I wanted to say one other thing, Anita. There are ways in which Carnatic music has inflected in this album that are not obvious. One of them is time signatures. We've used odd time signatures in interesting ways. And there are places where, if you listen to Think Miyazaki, when I sing She's So High on Life, I realized later that I was treating it as first Sangati, second Sangati, third Sangati, unconsciously, without realizing it. So each repetition has a little difference, a different twist to it, right? But they're very simple, like in the MS Vani. There aren't big flourishes, just subtle changes. So, I mean, I'm rocking here and it's nothing like Carnatic music. But the principle of that, you know, that you grow up with and you train rigorously and is still there in this record. So, yeah, I just want to mention that.
I mean, you just say that, you know, you're playing the tanpura and you're putting talam and, you know, writing and singing. So, I mean, that's automatically there. It's not as if all songwriters do that, right? So, to me, it makes complete sense. I mean, it makes complete sense. You don't even have to explain it to me. But I just want, you know, the audience out there and those who are going to be watching it later on IGTV, that I just feel it's a time where poetry has come of age. For something in the lockdown, people have reached to poetry, to the thoughts and words of poets. And I think you need to think of yourself as not just a songwriter, singer, but also a poet. And I think on that note, because we've been talking now for a good 40 minutes, would you like to sing something, or would you like to sing along with something? Just what would you like to do?
Sing,
because I have the track.
Yeah, I'll just sing.
Yeah, just sing.
I'll just sing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I may not remember the words off the top of my head, but I'll sing. But there are lines in Woe Begone that, you know, speak directly to questions of legacy or, you know, contrasts. The lines are fame, fortune, too late, too soon. Sirens wail, foghorns bellow. In tender light, wildflowers white, green grass, soft breezes mellow. Woe begone, the weary one, no place for pain or sorrow.
Wow. I'm going to turn the comments back on, and I'm going to ask audiences if you have a question for Akhila. But Akhila, may I just play the Think Miyazaki now for the audience from the SoundCloud? Would that be all right?
Yes.
Just a bit?
That's totally fine.
Because I know that's the album. Just Think Miyazaki. This is it's coming off another phone, but it's on SoundCloud, so.
I just want to run, she'll take us to you. Butterflies surrounding the bell, drive out a lover. Feel the trusty feline, poised to make a beeline. She's down Single wedding, patient silence, written to the court. Feelings that hum above a coil, clinging cake. Questions delicately posed. Curiously daunting, deliciously haunting.
I love this. So I'm going to let people just wait for the album, and we leave the rest. And I just want you to, why don't you tell the audience where they can pick it up, or where they can download it, where it will be available once it's released. What about the album release after the single? Go ahead.
Just quickly, a quick shout out to the 3 Kriya University interns, Shezor, Shreyasi, and Veda Shivram, who've been working on research and social media marketing for the album. And they've been driving me every day to do something about this. Really appreciate all their hard work. And their work, they provided the storyline for the video of this song, which will also drop on Friday, August 6th. And the video is made by 5 animators from Annapurna College of Film and Media in Hyderabad. 2D animators as their final project. So the educator in me and the artist in me are together now, very happy that we have students involved in the project. The single drops on all streaming platforms, including Spotify, on Friday. Our YouTube channel will carry the video made by this fantastic collaboration, which also includes illustrator Saloni Sinha. And the album will follow mid-September of this year. So
the YouTube channel is called Akhila and the
Alchemists.
The YouTube channel is called.
But it will be on Friday when Akhila and the Alchemists.
Okay. So and
if you want to follow us, you can follow us at Akhila the ALCHEMISTS
on Instagram. On Instagram.
Yes. On Instagram.
Akhila.alchemist, the Alchemist on Instagram.
Yes, on Instagram. Yeah, and then we'll have
links,
so now you have regular updates.
Okay, so now since you have all these amazing people, you've got a Columbus, Ohio old friend, you have somebody in Los Angeles as well who mastered it, right? You had somebody in LA, in California, yes, who also mastered the album?
Yes. Yes.
But are you
actually an old Columbus?
Ah, okay.
I think there's a lag, so we're overlapping. Yeah. I just wanted to say that Brian Lucy
Yes.
is the frontman and sort of brain of Doug's old band Nude, the one he played in for 16 years, and then he shifted gears and started mastering records, and he has his own mastering studio in LA. And so it is lovely to finish it off with somebody who I'd watched sing while Doug played for many years in Columbus. So that was the icing on the cake for us.
All right. So when you go back to academics and your next semester and your next academic year, I think you will be a much more happier associate professor of practice, or what your title. And I think your students are going to have, yes, your students are going to see, I think, yes, a different side of you, Akhila. I hope so. And I hope that we will see you more on stage and writing more, composing more, singing more. And yes, we will see the sides of you that I've always wanted to shine. So thank you so much for spending this time with us and sharing first at Think Miyazaki. All the best for Woe Begone. All the very best for Woe Begone. And I'm hoping the audiences who like indie music, who like poetry, who like the coming together of, Nadaswaram and English and everything, realize that we've always had such an open polyglot of influences right here in South India, both in dance and music. And Akhila is just bringing it all together. So thank you for watching. Stay safe, everyone. And thank you so much, Akhila.
I have one last thing to say. I hope to turn the tables on you when you write your book, because then I will interview you. Thank you, Anita. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Bye. Bye.